Hello. For my final course project, I chose to work with a model that is related to logistic regression in an effort to mitigate customer churn. And so we'll be talking about that today. So, just as kind of a broad overview, of course, modeling can be used to drive incremental growth and mitigate negative effects of customer behavior. So, if a customer is taking certain behavior, we want them to take less of that. Modeling can help us predictively identify use patterns to really predictively identify what a customer is going to do eventually before they do it. And ways to do that, of course, involve like k nearest neighbors, linear regression, logistic regression. Specifically within logistic regression, we'll be looking at that today, but that can classify a behavior or classify a customer prior to them taking the final behavior that they made with us, specifically in terms of churn. It could just be in terms of lower revenue, and of course, lower revenue often means less profitability for the company. So, what is customer churn? Because that's a lot of what we'll spend our time talking about today. Customer churn is when a customer has been taking a specific action or set of behaviors, specifically when it produces revenue for the company, and then they stop doing that. And so we often see churn related to like subscription or membership services, but really churn can be applied to when a customer stops taking any sort of behavior, engaging in any sort of behavior that is generating revenue or some benefit to the business. And so you take a company like Amazon, for instance, churn could be if a customer doesn't renew their Prime membership, they could cancel a specific subscription that they may have to a product or a set of products, or if they just purchase a product at a regular interval and then they stop doing that, they go outside their normal historical pattern, that also could be considered customer churn. So, what are the reasons that we have for customer churn occurring, and why is it important? So, could be a number of things. Like if it's a business to business customer, we may have them, facing like going out of business or bankruptcy. They may have been acquired, and so that's going to change. Of course, when there's a big scale, we don't have time to identify these issues. We may have to do that predictively or bring in a third party data set to identify those consumers. They might not need the product any longer. They also, however, could be finding the product from a competitor, and they could be getting more value for the same price or paying less than what they did with us. And so especially when customers have gone to a competitor, there's that like double whammy on the business. We're not getting the revenue, and then our competitors are. And so that really should be avoided at all costs. So, what can companies do to resolve churn? So, first of all, we start with our first party data and running a churn model against it to identify customers, the really the factors and the attributes of the customer that are leading up to them churning. And then once we have that output, we run the model, we have the output, then we can apply business rules to the output. Because there could be customers in certain segments. They could be like large customers or small customers, and the way that we apply our business rules to them could be different. We may not want to go after small customers. We may only want to predictively identify and then treat customers in like a large customer or large revenue set. So those business rules will help us understand how to segment them. And then we want to come up with our marketing treatment, and really marketing or sales treatment, depending on the nature of the business. That will be with the hopes of keeping them from churning, from going to a competitor or getting their, their goods or services elsewhere. And then once we've identified initial treatment, we can then take the performance data from that treatment and optimize it over time. So, where does predictive analytics come into this whole customer churn process? Well, logistic regression specifically can be effective for classifying customers who are at risk for churning. So we have churn as kind of like a binary yes or no status of a customer. And so logistic regression really helps us classify them into that yes or no state, especially when we have a good amount of historical data on our existing customers or former customers to understand their behaviors leading up to and their attributes leading up to when they churn. Logistic regression helps us understand which variables have the biggest are kind of the biggest predictors to churn. So then we kind of compile those together and eventually come up with our customer profile where hopefully prior to when they churn. So the customer data set that we looked at for this model that we created was a first party data set from gym members. So there were 4,000 of these. I grabbed them from Kaggle Online, and there were 4,000 customer records. They included a variety, I think well over a dozen different attributes. So it was the member's age, their gender, the current membership tenure, how long they had been a member at the gym. It also included whether they were near or, live close or far from the gym location, whether they participated in group classes, whether they had joined as kind of like a single member or with a partner. And there were some other attributes in there as well. The great thing about this data set, of course, is that there was no missing data, so we didn't have to impute any using Jump. The data was kind of all there for us. So, like I just said, um, we applied a logistic regression model in the Jump platform, and what the model ended up being able to do for us is identify about 6 key attributes that that would best predict the customers who churned and what their profile looked like. The p-values, all of them were less than, I guess that's 1 millionth of a percent. Uh, so that of course indicated the statistical significance of each attribute, and I've got screen caps of what those intercepts look like for each of those attributes in the appendix if you'd like to go check those out. So, and I'll scroll to that in the video at the end. So, interestingly enough, the attributes that contributed the most to churn were how long the member had been a customer, what the nature of their contract. So, the gym offered 1 month, 6 month, and 12-month contracts, and so then that was a big contributing factor. Also, whether they attended any classes, and then if they had kind of purchased any additional value-added services. So when we looked at these attributes, this is where the business rules come into play. So the profile of these churn members is that they skewed younger, so they were less than 21. They had become a member within the last 3 months. They were on a monthly plan versus a 6 or 12 month plan, and they had not really attended any classes of note, and they hadn't really purchased any added services. And so, what a marketing team could then do with this data is say, okay, we're going to reduce churn by providing some discounts for those who had signed up recently, taken out a membership recently, maybe it'd be discounts on one-on-one coaching or group classes. They could begin offering the discounts at the time of enrollment or within a 2-month window, because that's really when we saw the churn increase after that 2-month mark. And then really offer them incentives to bump up to a 6-month or an annual plan. So, what could also be done as well to enhance this in terms of business rules is to apply like a customer lifetime value or CLV flag to each record. So, if we don't have the wherewithal, advertising wise, or or we want to make our email marketing more effective to these groups, then we can maybe create like a high CLV, mid and low, and maybe only treat one. If we, can't give discounts across the board, let's go with the ones that seem like they're contribute will contribute the most revenue to the business. So, in conclusion, we can use predictive modeling to drive business results. Logistic regression specifically can be deployed to classify customers who are at risk for churning, and then through properly designed marketing and sales treatment, we can potentially persuade customers not to churn, to increase their CLV for the business. And if we can't keep them from churning over a long period, maybe eke out some more revenue from them. There's some references and our our intercepts for each of these, as well as the high level probability that this was not due to chance. Thank you so much. And just have to say, I've had a wonderful time in the course. It's been extremely informative and very applicable to the work that I do on a day basis. So I appreciate being part of the course. Thank you so much. Bye.